Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. This is Victor. So this is going to be an interesting video. I can't wait to hear the presentation. I don't know about this, but it's kind of just about how when you look at things, you've got to question everything.
Yes.
And you got to focus on your own deprogramming. Like I mentioned the Giants one time.
Right.
And we've gotten multiple comments like, "Do the Giants." It's kind of like that, because this is politics adjacent. Not crazy important, this video.
Right.
But it's about the process of deprogramming. I can't wait to see what you found out.
Yeah, and even about the Giants thing, I feel like it is political. Why are they lying about it?
Okay.
That type of thing.
If they are lying about it, right.
So today we're going to talk about oil, and this is something that's somewhat new to my thinking. This is not something that I've had for a long time, probably like 2 years. I watched a video, and there's one video that if you've looked into this, you've seen the video. I'm trying to go a little bit deeper into this.
And what platform is that video on?
It's on YouTube. There'll be a link below.
Okay.
And it's we'll get into the video.
Okay.
So I just wanted to talk about oil to begin with, like petroleum. So what kind of fuel is oil? It is what we call a fossil fuel.
Okay.
Right. And so you know why it's called fossil fuel?
Because the dinosaurs all came to the same place.
Okay.
Then decomposed in massive dinosaur pits. It created hundreds of millions of gallons of oil.
Right. Okay. So that was the story growing up. 100% that it was the dinosaurs and that
Nobody just don't think too hard about it.
Right. But even as a kid, I was literally thinking like you, they're all in the same place and they all just died at the same time and, became this. And it just never really made sense to me. But, I've just kind of always gone with it. So I looked it up in preparation for this video, like how was oil formed? It's no longer dinosaurs. So the thing that they have told us for almost 100 years, they've now changed. And it now comes from algae and zooplankton, like remains at the bottom of oceans and lakes that gets more debris, gets stacked up under it. And as it's slowly getting buried, it gets to a point where there's enough pressure on it and heat and time goes by that's when magic happens. And so
magic, I love it.
But when you look on Wikipedia about this, there are just all these sections about all these processes. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, no one's seen this happen. This is just like stuff you're just making up, or I don't understand how they invented all of this stuff, like to prove that this is happening.
I feel like if I was doing this, I could just make big enough words and enough like charts and stuff, and you look at it and you're like, it's legit.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next term that we're going to use is oil reserve, which I completely did not have the right definition of. I tell you that the U.S. has 40 million barrels of oil reserve. What does that mean to you?
Is this the strategic reserve?
Just oil reserve. So not strategic.
I've never heard of oil reserve.
Okay, oil reserve, I thought it was like tanks, like the strategic type thing. And this is, if everything goes bad, we have this much oil in backup. When you mention a country's oil reserves, that's how much oil they believe is still in the ground.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So, which countries would you believe have the biggest oil reserves currently?
Well, Eastern Saudi Arabia has a ton.
Oh, yeah. Saudi Arabia is number 2.
Okay. Can we just say ocean or no? Because the ocean, there's a ton down. I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah, I would assume there is. I think we don't get a lot of it because it's so hard to get to, would be my guess.
Okay.
But, you just go down Iran and Iraq are way up there. U.S. is way less. It's a fraction of...
so we're just talking about oil reserve. It's got a fraction.
Right, of the overall...
Okay, interesting.
And number 1 is Venezuela.
Oh, yeah, they're doing big things down there, right? But it's very crude, though.
Well, it's really hard to get to, I think, because of the train and all that. So
I heard it was very hard to process.
Oh, okay.
It just takes... So they ship it. That's what I heard.
Gotcha. So... all in all, if you add up all the numbers, I just kind of eyeballed it. It's about 1 trillion barrels of oil reserves on the planet. So our current rate is about 90 million barrels a day. So it's going to last for 29 years currently. So that usage was from 2022. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So just thinking about these numbers, 1 trillion barrels, how many dinosaurs is that? I'm still thinking in dinosaurs because it's even harder for me to believe that there's that many plankton or whatever. So I go down this rabbit hole. I'm like, okay, well, how many gallons in a barrel? How much does a gallon of oil weigh? And I'm just trying to convert this. I picked Brontosaurus because it's a giant. So about 15 tons. So it's 10 billion Brontosauruses to create this much oil. If you went a 1-to-1 ratio, like every ounce of a dinosaur became an ounce of oil. So no waste.
And I also want to know how many brontosaurus were alive at any one point on the planet.
Right. Like I was like,
They're not like rabbits.
Right. And just the amount of resources it would take. So I'm like, okay, how many people is that? So given 200-pound people, it's 1.5 trillion human beings. And like we haven't even had, what, 10 or 11 billion through all time that we... Like, you know,
and they all have to go to one spot to die.
Or just a couple, like in Middle
Yeah.
East. So we got some down in South America. And it's so hard for me to believe that that's a real thing. So then the next question is, well, why is it called fossil fuel then? If that isn't the truth, why lie about it? How did it come about?
But is now the fossil related to the zooplankton? That's why they call it fossil now?
Yeah, it's still a fossil.
So that's the new fossil theory.
Right. It's just
I
a
didn't
different
understand
fossil.
that. I thought they were getting away from fossils.
No.
But so they're still
They're
doing
just tiny
fossils.
tiny
It's just
little
different
fossils.
type of fossils.
Right.
What kind of fossils are going to be tomorrow? It's aliens.
Right. So I think that changes in the last 20 years.
Okay.
Because it was definitely, in older stuff, I can see the dinosaurs, like they had ads on TV, like this dinosaur gave his life so you could run your car, like that. Just weird stuff. I think that was
Propaganda.
80s.
Beautiful.
Okay. So in 1892, there was a convention in Geneva, Switzerland, and it was called the Organic Substances Convention. And their goal, they wanted to come together, and the scientists wanted to define what is organic. If something has this makeup, do we classify it as organic? So basically, they came up with, if it has hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, we will classify that thing as maybe dead now, but it potentially could have been alive at some point. So that's a fact, that all that happened. The one that's kind of urban legend or whatever that no one's ever admitted to is the idea that Rockefeller went down there with his own scientists.
I've heard that.
And because oil contains those three things, he got his scientists to convince the rest of them that this oil was also alive, and hence it became fossil fuel. And the idea is that if oil is defined as something that's scarce and running out, you can charge more for it. So it was just a money play. Okay. And
I didn't understand what I was literally thinking. Why fossils?
Right.
Because if you get to the point in this story somewhere that there's unlimited oil,
right,
it only matters how quick you can pull it out of the ground.
Right.
Wow. Artificial scarcity. Okay.
Right. And so I'm reading these articles. A lot of these articles are decades old because of the certain things I was searching, and definitely a better feel for they were actually trying to do journalism. Like
Okay.
they weren't pushing a certain way. They were actually giving both sides.
Are we going to have some of these articles linked below?
Yeah. Everything I've got
excellent.
is all coming from this.
Cool.
There's a lot of good reading. So in these articles, they're saying, well, here's all the people that believe it's fossils. And you go through, it's all the OPEC nations and the oil companies. And so everyone who's financially invested
Okay.
is backing this.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's not an objective group you got there,
Right.
So it's just, my spidey senses tingle through this whole thing. Like this it really does not feel, especially with all the other stuff that we've talked about on this
Right.
channel, this doesn't seem too far-fetched that we've been lied to for 120 years or whatever. All right. So let's see. So we get to, if it's not coming from fossils, where does it come from? And now we're going to talk about this video that we'll link below. And it's a guy named Colonel L. Fletcher Proudy is his name. He's dead now. He still has a website, Proudy.com. And basically 10, 20 years ago, he was in the military. And he's basically just been around and knows a bunch of stuff. And he documented some of it that's on the site, and people would email him questions, and they've eventually just started putting all his email conversations on the site where people are researching and finding out more stuff about like the oil. It's not just about oil on the site. I haven't dug into all of it, but if it's as good as the oil stuff, it may be a really good site to just poke through and entertain yourself.
Interesting.
So basically what he's saying is that the earth produces oil. It's a natural thing that happens deep inside the earth, and through pressure and all that, it's pushed towards the surface. And he says the Russians have known about this for a long time. They've had oil fields that they would pump dry, and they came back 50 or 60 years later, and they're full of oil again. And they just start up the pumps
that.
and
Yeah.
And so it's just a normal thing over there that they understand that this happens.
So they can deplete it, but they have to wait for it to refill.
Right. It isn't like it's just a faucet that's pumping in there.
Okay.
It's slowly coming up
Okay.
and seeping up. So from the Proudy website, there was a link, and I'll have the link below, but it's to it's like their, back in the day when you had a magazine, like a physical magazine, you would put the article online. And so this is the digital version of Science Frontiers from July and August of 99. So in the Gulf of Mexico, 80 miles off of the Louisiana coast, there is a offshore, like oil
rig,
platform, whatever, called Eugene Island 300. They started pumping in the 70s. They were getting 15,000 barrels a day from it, and they estimated that there was a 60 million barrel reserve. So they pumped it through the 70s, through the 80s, and 89, they were down to 4,000 barrels a day was all they could get out of it. Then at some point, I couldn't find how long this took. One place mentioned a decade, so we'll say mid to late 90s. They come back to this thing, and they're now producing 13,000 barrels a day, so it's almost back up to the original. They try to figure out how much oil is in there, and they went from 60 million to 400 million barrels. And they do some tests on the oil, and there's a test that they do to figure out the age of the oil. It's different oil than was originally in there. Like it's a different batch, or it came from somewhere else, and you're just like, that's crazy. It totally disrupts the whole.
And what's the source for this whole story right here? This is off the Proudy website?
But it's a link to that Science Frontiers magazine.
Okay,
that
to
a physical magazine that came out.
Okay.
And it's let me see so there's other occurrences of like the reserves changing. So this is from Wall Street Journal, April of 99, that from 99 back to 79, the Middle East, we're pumping oil like crazy for 20 years. And in 99, they're testing their reserves, and they claim that they have double the oil that's left than they had 20 years previous. Like, it's not that it's running out.
I can't wait to see this article. This is great.
It's just amazing stuff. So it leads us to this dude named, it's T. Gold. He wrote a book called The Depop Biosphere. And the book is actually online. I'm going to link it to you. It's on archive.org, like the whole, if you want to read this entire book. And the guy's like a physicist, and he predicted he predicted pulsars before they were discovered, or we understood what a pulsar was. He knew that galaxies were going to be sending radio waves, or that they would come from galaxies before we detected them. And so he had a bunch of interesting things that he perceived about the world before they were actually discovered. That doesn't mean that this is true. I'm just saying this isn't some quack. This is a guy who seems like he knew what he was talking about. And so his theory is called, like the name of the book, Depop Biosphere. But he theorizes that inside of the Earth is a biosphere that has more mass and volume than all the plants and animals on the surface. Now, that doesn't mean it's like during the center of the Earth where there's people and stuff.
Right.
He's saying it's all like bacteria. And it's a bacteria that thrives in the really hot environment that's down there. And as the oil is coming up through the Earth, it feeds on the oil and the natural gas. And the remains that you see in the oil is those bacteria that gives it the, quote, fossil aspects, the oxygen and the hydrocarbon, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just his theory, but it's a reason why oil is how we see it now.
Reserves are growing, and
right, because it's coming up. So in a book called Degassing of the Earth and the Origin of Hydrocarbons, it says that a French chemist in 1866, I'm not a chemist, so I don't quite understand, but it involved iron and soaking it in sulfuric acid, and basically he was able to synthesize creation of oil or something that it had the same properties of oil. I get the impression that it didn't have the same chemical makeup, but it acted like oil and that type of thing. And the idea is that even back then, they were trying to, or the thought existed that this could just be a natural thing. When these conditions happen, oil appears.
Yeah, 160 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, incredibly long ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, just an incredibly fascinating idea that what if we've been lied to? What if there is almost unlimited? I mean, if this reaction happens with iron, I believe the Earth is made of like 80% iron. Like the whole, like when you go deep and everything, like it's not something you're going to run out of. The implications of that are incredible. That this is, and it's just all been for money for 100 years. And
it's funny because like with the diamonds thing, you look at it and you're like, okay, I get where you're going with that. This one, you don't get where they're going with it. And it drives the political agenda. It drives wars. It drives climate change. It drives... Not that I'm saying if there were unlimited oil, that would change the climate change situation.
Right.
Because still they're saying the using of it. So,
right.
But I'm just saying.
Right. Like, does that make all the wars artificial? If we just need to pump more out of the ground because it's just going to be there forever?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many people know about this? If it's, if this is a real thing, and like you literally have to brainwash everyone who is a geologist and that looks into this to believe this certain thing.
But how many people really look at oil reserves, like actually do the study of it?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's got to be a small group.
Right. Everyone just else believes.
Because how do you even look down there and you're like, oh, it's not 60 million, it's 400 million barrels.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a radar thing.
Is it 399 or is it 722 million? Like,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems far-fetched to me.
Right. But anyway,
I think it sounds compelling.
Right.
Because the reserves are going. I don't know how you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they turned the pumps on after a while. Those seem to be compelling things.
Right. How do you explain that with the dinosaurs or the zooplankton or whatever? Like there was just another pool below that's somehow getting pushed up?
Maybe the underground dinosaurs, seeing that there was an emptiness. And
went
so
down
they
there and died.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a million years time lapse real fast.
See, I thought as a kid that it was the dinosaurs, but it was the meteor hitting that killed them all off and they were buried under debris and that type of thing. But I could be wrong about that. And again, that would make them all having to be alive at the same time.
But in the same area?
Right.
Because the big ones had to spread out.
Right.
Like brontosauruses.
Yeah.
You can't just put 1,000 of them in an area or there'll be no foliage left.
Right.
You know?
I mean, you see how quick a couple of cows can just
or some
mow
chickens,
down
chickens in a limited area. Yeah,
that's true.
Barrenness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I find it interesting.
Okay, yeah. I don't know what's true. I just know it's a little fishy. These other things because of this other evidence. And what if this is true? And just get you thinking,
which allows you to question other things if this could possibly be. Yeah. So basically, we're just saying. I appreciate the presentation. I thought it was fascinating.
Cool.
We're basically just saying challenge everything.
Right.
Like look into everything, try to focus on deprogramming yourself. Now, like I never saw the dinosaur commercials,
Okay.
But now I want to see who's pushing the scarcity of oil now.
Right.
All of a sudden my mind's going to start red flagging things like that and be like, plus I want to look at these articles you got because, I mean, sounds fascinating. We hope you enjoyed this episode and we look forward to seeing you next time.